Not only are we looking at a big presidential race, but obviously a big congressional race coming up. So let's take a look at both the House and the Senate. What is ahead for the Senate? Is there a chance that Republicans can take over?
They should take over the Senate because that race is the class that's up for the Democrats. It was a huge victory in 2006 for the Democrats. You've had a lot of retirements. Nelson of Nebraska just retired. North Dakota's gone. So they only need 3 seats. So if the presidential election is close, and I mean by close 3–4%, something like that, my guess is that the Republicans get the Senate and keep the House. But if the Republican candidate falls behind, then I think even the House could go and it gets close. Because there are some seats that the Democrats might pick up. And so as we go along in this thing, we'll do more detailed analysis on it. But at this point, if the presidential race is close, you'd have to say I think the Republicans take the Senate. Not big, but like 51, 52, 48. And they won't lose it big either under any set of circumstances. But in the House, probably stays. Republicans lose some seats, but keep the House. I don't know, is that?
Yes, I agree that there are 4 seats in the Senate to watch, in my opinion. Massachusetts, Montana, Nevada, and Virginia. I think the Republicans have potentially strong showings in all of those states. For example, in Massachusetts, the recent development of this truce of the super PACs, if that actually comes to pass, I think is an advantage for Scott Brown. In Montana, you have Democratic Senator John Tester being challenged by Denny Rehberg, and that's, in my opinion, a great state to watch and a great race to watch because since Montana only has 1 member of Congress, it's not just some member of Congress being an upstart trying to get a Senate seat, right? He's used to campaigning all the way across that big state. So I think, yeah, Republicans have a good shot in the Senate. And in the House, they'll probably pick up a few seats, would be my guess, not based on the number crunching. The Republicans do have an advantage with redistricting. In 2010, they picked up control in a lot of state legislatures, and the redistricting that is being handled through partisan processes is overwhelmingly being done by Republicans this time around. And so I've seen estimates that say that the Democrats are at a 10 to 15 seat deficit based on the redistricting process. So if you're going to try to make up that 25 seat gap that you have right now to pick up the majority with that deficit, now you're saying, okay, I have to pick up between 35 and 40 seats. How do you do that? I do think that there are 2 things working to the disadvantage of the Republicans at this point in the election cycle. The first is that we've had these big swing elections, and so you've had these competitive districts flopping back and forth. And so a lot of the seats that were picked up by Republicans last time had were marginal districts, so they're going to be hard to hold on to. And second, it's been a bad year for the congressional Republicans. They went into 2011 with a 46% unfavorable approval rating, and I just saw some internal Republican polling that says that number is now 64% unfavorable after the debacle of the almost default, if that's what you thought might have happened, and the super committee and the political disaster that was the payroll tax cut debate in December, and now they're facing another one. So now is time for the Republicans in the House in particular to really get their house in order to avoid this being potentially a much bigger pickup for the Democrats than I think we're already slated for.
Yeah, the Republicans in the House especially are caught between the Tea Party and the independents, basically. The 2 stories that came out of the last election are in conflict. That the Tea Party wants absolute ideological purity, and independents want to see progress done. And so it creates a real problem for people. Just one other point to make is that 20 or 30 years ago, there was a lot of distance between the presidential vote and the congressional vote. But in recent years, they're moving much more closely together. And so whatever happens, if the Republicans were to really have a disastrous candidate, and then they would probably lose. They could lose the House, and they would lose their opportunity to take the Senate. So that's one of the reasons why having the right person at the top of the ticket is even more important now, much more important now than it would have been a generation ago.
I think that's a really important point that not picked up very often, because we used to, when I started long ago, obviously, in political science, there was the so-called coattail effect. But by the mid-'60s, it was sort of gone, and we turned to the incumbency effect, how incumbents kept winning. But as Mo said, over time, if you look at the vote by party, Republicans and Democrats and independents for the House and Senate, those two votes get closer. So it used to be that a lot of Democrats would vote for a Republican incumbent and vice versa. Not any longer. They're moving together, and that means the coattails are back, which means the top of the party, top of the ticket makes a difference.
And that's why you have a lot of congressional Republicans very worried about the prospect of a Gingrich nomination, as they think that that bodes poorly for Republicans down the ticket.
And they should be.
Well, and we also saw such an effect in the midterm on the Tea Party, and Mo, you touched on that. Do you think we're going to see that phenomenon this time around?
My sense is it just isn't as important. I mean, some of the passion has died off and some of the frustrations have built up, and there have been internal fights about endorsing candidates versus not endorsing candidates. And I don't think it's going to be, I mean, it's certainly not going to continue to be a factor, but my sense is it may not be as major a story in this election coming up as it was in 2010.
Yeah, that passion thing, the same thing's going to be true for President Obama.
Yeah.
I mean, in 2008, I voted on the Stanford campus, and so, you know, students don't get up till 10:30 or 11, so usually I'd go and vote about 10 o'clock, and there's no line. And this year I got, oh my God, there was a line of about 70 people. There are people who live, students who'd just gone crazy over the Obama, and that's just not, that's not there now. So that passion's died in sort of the same way. Not to say they're not going to, that's not a prediction that the youth vote's going to go Republican. It's just a question there's not going to be the same level of passion there.
If you're advising the congressional campaigns, what would you, or the candidates, what would you tell them, what issues are going to be important to them, or is it more of a regional effect where you just can't even predict it?
It's kind of district by district. You know, the great thing about Congress, they got a lot of wiggle room, right? I mean, when an issue comes out, they can go back and campaign. I voted against Democrats who are in the South, the Blue Dogs. They can say I voted against the president when it mattered. I can stand up to him, and Republicans can go I voted for the district when I needed to. So it really is sort of summing across 435 little individual campaigns.
Boehner's strategy should be do no harm. That, he shouldn't do anything he doesn't have to do. Don't make people make tough votes. I mean, don't do what Pelosi did to the Democrats in 2011, no, 9. But just do the things you have to do and just don't do any harm. It's better to be a do nothing majority than a do harm majority.
Well, I know you're a political scientist and you don't make predictions, but you also have tenure, and so if your prediction is wrong, you're still fine. So let's end things today with your pick on what we will see in 2013 for the presidency and the Congress.
Well, I'm going to avoid that question by saying the following thing. Whoever the president is, if there's going to be change in American politics, it is not going to be in this next coming year. 2013 brings three big issues. The first is the taxes actually go up 3.8% on all of your income to cover Medicare. The second thing is the Bush tax cuts run out. And the third thing is the real costs of the president's health care bill start to come to due. And so whatever that combination, Democrat, Republican, they have to deal with that set of issues. And if you put a gun to my head, if it strikes me, if it were President Obama with the Republican House and Senate, we'll see how much the president really believes in cutting and compromising, and we'll see about the Republican side. But those three issues are going to dominate whatever the configuration is.
Tammy, your words of wisdom?
I don't have tenure, so I shouldn't make
She can't say anything.
And he won't predict, I can tell you.
I mean, I think it's really hard to predict. I agree with David. They have been kicking a set of issues down the road forever. Those issues have really been pushed forward by the crash and the resulting recession. And they can't keep putting them off much longer. The markets are going to turn on them. And so I think there's going to be enormous pressure to do something. And if they don't do anything, then I think the pressure on the part of the electorate that kick all these bums out of here and start over is going to be overwhelming.